Should we move those wires on, or are you
Ready. Testing. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another self-advocacy presentation sponsored by HCA. We're very, very fortunate today to have another community member here with us to share exactly about this particular topic from the experiences of people who are actually in the disability community. My name is Francis Riso. I'm a social worker at HCA in Johnson City, and this will be recorded and posted on YouTube as well. So if there's anybody who wants to come and go or can't stay for the whole thing, just please know HCA's YouTube page will also have a recording of this event today, as well as the HCA website at hcaserves.com. We'll have a section labeled self-advocacy at the top. So I'm pleased to present our local community member today. His name is Derek Vladescu, and he's going to talk to us and with us about self-advocacy in his experience and the importance of self-advocacy in the disability community. I think that there will be plenty of time for questions as well, but feel free to raise your hand and start a dialogue, because that's why we're all here today, to be able to share back and forth. So I'll be in the back. Feel free to reach out to me if you need me. And Derek, I leave it to you. Thank you. Round of applause for Derek.
Thank you, Francis. Yes, today I would like to talk about my experience being a self-advocate, living with a disability, and different subtopics related to self-advocacy and living my life. I would like this also to be a discussion if possible, so I would like to encourage everyone here to speak up. If you have anything to say, raise your hand, or just, yes.
Is this like an advocacy, like to tell what's going on and developmental situations?
Well, I'll be talking, I have a slideshow where I'll be talking about various issues related to living with a developmental disability and doing self-advocacy. But I'd like to open up the floor to everybody to share your experiences and any comments you have to say that are related to self-advocacy. And, the first thing I'd like to do is to ask all of you to introduce yourselves. Maybe Francis, if you can bring the mic around, if you don't mind.
All right.
And just briefly say just your name and why you're here and what brings you here. And this will be like our icebreaker.
You want to be the first icebreaker?
Sure. My name is John McNulty. I am here from the Southern Tier Independence Center, and I'm also a parent of a person with developmental disability.
Janelle Boyer? I'm a mom of somebody who has developmental disabilities.
Well, I'm Stephanie Thornton, and I work with HCA. I'm in the Human Resources Department, and I just want to hear from everyone here today.
Good afternoon, I'm Sue Wheeler. I'm the president of the STAR Group. We're an organization that advocates for people with disabilities and both physical and mental health.
Hello, Tyler Bavro. I have a developmental disability.
Hi there, I'm Megan Kackmeister. I work for HCA. I'm in the finance department, and I wanted to see what you were all about, Derek.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jackie Dwyer. I just started at HCA nearly 2 weeks ago, and work for Lisa directly. And I'm also a mom of a son with developmental disabilities and mental health issues.
Good afternoon, I'm Ann LaMonaco, Administrative Support for HCA, and wanted to hear about your story as well.
My name is Gorette Mugambo. I've been working for HCA for maybe 17 years as a behavior specialist and professional, and I'm a social worker. I come from Uganda.
I'm Lisa Cost, and I'm with HCA also, and I'm here to learn from you and to support your efforts in your self-advocacy.
Thank you.
My name is Alexis Torbello. I do the marketing here at HCA, so I am the reason for the technical difficulties, and I'm very sorry. But I am here besides that because I want to know what I can do in the community to help people with disabilities, as myself, to help you advocate for what you need to be able to be a part of our community.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Emily. I am the Day Service Coordinator at HCA, and I am here to support Derek and other individuals.
Thank you, everyone, for introducing yourself. Most of you are new faces to me, and it's great to meet new people that are interested in finding out about self-advocacy and hearing what I have to say. And I hope that you'll get a lot out of this, my presentation, and that we can have a back and forth discussion, and we can have some input from other people besides just me. This is Krista, my DSP. She's here today, and she's helping me, moral support and just helping me make sure everything, if I need anything. Okay, so I'll get started. Back almost exactly 21 years ago, when I was traveling, I had a traumatic injury, a back injury and a head injury. And the purpose of this talk is to kind of outline how I've developed as a self-advocate, some challenges I faced, some issues I've dealt with, and I know a lot of other people with disabilities have dealt with living with a developmental disability. As we work to achieve our short and longer term goals with the help of the many supports that are made available to us. So what is self-advocacy? Francis, if you could, sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. I know that one's giving you a little feedback, so I want to leave that for you.
No, I'm just saying, just in case anyone has anything to say.
Oh, sure.
Thank
Gotcha.
you.
Of course.
Okay. I would like to ask you what self-advocacy means to you in a few words, a sentence, a couple sentences. Are there any key words that you think of when you hear self-advocacy? What comes to mind? You raise your hand, Francis. I'm sure we'll be happy to.
What comes to mind for me is fighting for my own rights, speaking on my own behalf.
Speaking for your own rights?
Speaking on my own behalf.
Okay.
Ask for what I need, or to say what I need for somebody might be in a higher position, and I approach those people to talk about what my needs are.
Yes.
That's what I think of self-advocacy, speaking on my own behalf.
Yes, I think those are universal characteristics for self-advocacy because I'll be talking about self-advocacy from having a developmental disability myself, but all of us need to be self-advocates. We all have needs, we all have wishes, and we rely on other people to help us meet our needs. So being able to be a good self-advocate, I think, is a universal skill that we can have and that is good to develop. If anyone else, I have some other questions, not to spend too much time on this slide, but does anybody here consider themselves, have thought of themselves as a self-advocate or know anybody they consider self-advocate? Yes.
Self-advocacy for myself and my wife, Chelsea. Tyler speaking. For state troopers and people and grandmother, I see as being a dad and her being a mom. and her standing up for herself and me. And actually, I think they're the one that should be actually developing, actually.
I'm sorry to hear you're in that unfortunate situation. And I think that a lot of times, as I'll be touching on in this presentation, we deal with bullying. People with disabilities, just like the general population, deal with a lot of bullying that can go to the extent of being crime. And that's where it's important to know your rights, to be able to stand up for your rights, and sometimes to involve law enforcement. Thank you. Okay, so I think that, I'm sorry, what's your name again? Tyler. Yeah, he kind of touched on another question I had, which is what do self-advocates do? And we've kind of talked about it a little bit. The self-advocates stand up here and, I'm sorry, I missed your name. Goretti. Okay, she was talking about, speaking up for herself and her needs, leaning on other, where sometimes we're in a position where we rely on other people to have our needs met, if they're in a position of power over us or so on and so forth. And so that kind of covers, in a nutshell, in a general sense, what self-advocates do. We speak up for our needs and we exercise our rights. There are a lot of services I found I've lived in New York State most all my life, except for a couple of years when I was in school before my injury. Discovered that OPWDD, the services available and other services through New York State, there are a lot of supports created for those with disabilities and those with developmental disabilities, such as OPWDD self-direction program, which I currently utilize. Is anyone here? If you raise your hand, if you're in the self-direction program, Tyler is. I don't know. Okay, and we get to hire our own staff. We get to hire our own DSPs, and we get to live. We have a lot of power and financial backing to live the life that we want to live, which is really a godsend. I think it's really a blessing for us. Access VR, the vocational office helps us find jobs. If we're considered disabled, by Social Security, we can utilize the vocational office to help us find jobs. Now, the downside is that a lot of people that are in positions of power are not familiar with the disabled population or what it means what our disabilities really mean. They have their bias, which can be said, I think, about much of the public that doesn't have experience working with or living with or having a disability. And they might see us as inferior or take advantage of our vulnerabilities, whether physical, mental, logistical, or all of the above. And this ties into bullying and other forms of mistreatment. I think that we can speculate on why this happens, but I think it has to do kind of with the fear. A lot of people don't know how to deal with, how to act around or toward people with disabilities they see as different. And there's so many unknowns for them as to what we're capable of, what we want, what our needs are, what is the best way to. A lot of people have come up to me asking about disability etiquette, how to speak to somebody, approach somebody that they see in public in a wheelchair, that uses a wheelchair. And I said, using common sense, it's okay to ask questions like, just treat us like anybody else, except that we have this limited mobility. And just as long, I guess the rule of thumb is just to be respectful. Some people think that they have a bias against people with disabilities and just use us for to meet their needs in a negative way, thinking that we cannot contribute to society. But I think that together, through groups such as the Self-Advocacy group here at HCA, or through other self-advocacy groups, and through consolidating supports and services, that we can fight the public bias, get information out about what people with disabilities are capable of and what we're about and what our needs are and how we can live in society in a way that is agreeable to us and beneficial to society as a whole. Part of this is being seen and heard, leading to being accepted. I'm glad I have this opportunity to give this talk, and hopefully it will have it'll cause ripples that will lead to more acceptance for those with disabilities. As far as meeting your needs as a self-advocate, I mentioned that we all rely on other people to some extent to have our needs met. We're all born in a very dependent state, similar like to being an infant, being a child. We're dependent on our parents or our caretakers to take care of us. So that's true of everybody. People with disabilities tend to be more vulnerable even as adults. So perhaps we depend more on others to have our needs met. But some places you can look to meet people to help you to find support for achieving your goals and living a high quality of life include work, family, friends, or religious or spiritual practice. If you go to a church or a synagogue or a mosque or a temple, going to school or taking classes, whether online or in person. The internet is a big resource for finding information on almost anything if you know where to look. Doing volunteer work, I've made some valuable relationships through doing volunteer work over the years. Some people like to go to camps during the summer. I'm not a big camper, but I know that some people like camping. Library events, I like to go to the public library to look around at the books and magazines and get involved with the different groups there and talk to people. Other recreational activities or community venues. Sometimes we rely on our families to support us. Sometimes our families are limited in how much support they're willing or able to give us. And that's why we need to be able to reach out, to look in the right places in the community to find supports. All of us, whether we have a disability or not, need our thoughts, emotions, and feelings to be validated to an extent. All of us, I think, want to be loved and valued for who we are, and we need help with our daily goals, whether it's our ADLs, activities of daily living, or our longer-term goals, such as getting an education, getting a job, socializing, or pursuing hobbies, exercising, preparing meals. More about self-advocacy. This is some of the subcategories of what it means to be a self-advocate according to the resource I found on the internet for this image here. Speaking up for yourself, staying informed about what's going on around you, what's going on in public, what's going on in politics as far as what your rights are, what the law is for people that have certain conditions and disabilities. What is acceptable and what is not acceptable behavior, ways to be treated by others, or ways to behave yourself. Knowing your rights, finding support, problem solving. All of us have problems in our life, and it's good to have try to keep a positive attitude and be able to problem solve and troubleshoot, often with the help of other people. Self-determination, that's what it's is it called self-determination? Yeah, that's the name of the program that, self-direction, yeah, called self-direction. It used to be called self-determination. That's the name of the program that OPWDD has that really is has been a blessing for me. I've been self-directing my services since 2009. And it was a completely different experience once I got involved with that program. Much better experience for me than the first 6 years of my life after my injuries. And there's something else that I wanted to talk about. Other groups that, if you want to talk to me about, I'll have my contact information. I'll post it at the end of the presentation. But there's a monthly meeting at Community Options for people with traumatic brain injuries. I organize a monthly support group meeting at the Vestal Public Library for people living with paralysis or limited mobility, pretty much any kind of physical disability. There are online education opportunities and opportunities for entertainment. You know, everyone knows Netflix and, you know, Hulu and, you know, companies like that. Then there's supported decision-making, which I don't know a ton about, but there's a flyer. I don't know if Emily has flyers that we print. Did you guys print out those flyers?
I'm sorry, Derek, I don't have those.
What'd you say?
I don't have them, I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, I will, maybe we can follow up. I'll put them on the slides. There are,
Derek, we'll get them.
okay, thank you. I put a link there. If you do a Google search for supported decision-making, it's kind of like a legal way for people that are more vulnerable, that have disabilities, to self-direct their lives and have supports at the same time instead of just automatically having a guardian. So if anybody is dealing with guardianship or making decisions in their own lives, supported decision-making might be a good path to investigate. Now I'd like to transition to talk about DSPs, direct support professionals, for people that, you know, are using the self-directed services. And hopefully we'll be I can share some of my experiences interviewing, hiring DSPs. And if any of you have experience with that, in any capacity, working with DSPs, hiring them, utilizing them, please feel free to raise your hand if you have any input related to, you know, your experience with DSPs.
For my daughter, we've always gone through an agency. Fish now.
Okay.
And it's worked fine. We tried self-directed, and it was difficult. I'm not really sure why, because her mom was sort of the lead on it.
Okay. It can be difficult to find. I found it can be difficult to find somebody that's a good fit, somebody reliable, somebody that does the job well, that you get along with, because there has to be a personality match. It's like a closer relationship, almost like a family or friend, right?
Yes.
But once you found a good fit, then it's great. But until that point, it can be very difficult. There could be times where you don't really have as much support as you want. That's the benefit of working through an agency, I think, because then you always have somebody, right? Or most of the time, right?
Most of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My daughter, not everybody can handle her,
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
which I'm kind of proud of.
I got experience with some.
Tyler has a question or comment.
So I had self-directed for like a couple years, for like a year or so too. And ever since during COVID, I had Access VR, and I had staff with me and advocacy through, there was another agency called a life plan or life support through Access VR, and we had New York State that threw out and staffing to drive me around, like take me to the mall or take me somewhere I gotta go to my appointments, mostly helpful. And then before COVID, and then during COVID, isolated, didn't really suffer. I know how to, had a lot of potential in survival skills, including budgeting skills. They taught me a lot of things. They taught me where to go, like how to survive, how to go several appointments, and then I went through self-direction, and then I wanted to. I hired some staff that I can rely on, trust, and then and then the tragic that I don't know, several staff didn't wanted to work with me, and well, I decided to. I worked with one staff, and they were like family to me. They treated me like family, and then I started going to their like house and stuff, and it's nice. Fix me lunch, dinner. It's like respite. It was like respite. I spend the night a couple times, and then I go back home, and then now ever since I've never had a staff for at least who knows, about a year. I've been driving my own car, and it taught me a lot of integrity, and it taught me a lot of directions, where to go, where to make appointments, and maybe feel that I've learned a lot of experience through it.
That's awesome. I mean, the goal is to be more independent, to have the services you need, but it sounds like Tyler, you had a good experience overall with your DSPs and learned a lot from them, which is great. I personally have become, over the years, I've become more independent with things like myself. I've become more independent with things like doing my ADLs and chores around the house. Because what works for me is watching somebody else model the behavior for me. And then I say to myself, well, maybe I could do that. And then watching them, if I see someone do it long enough, then I can try it out myself. And then I build more confidence with that. And now 90-some% of the time I do my laundry myself now. And I think that's a big improvement that I've had. I started cooking more, and I've had DSPs that help me with that model that behavior for me and kind of show me how to troubleshoot a recipe that it's not an exact science. And you're in charge of what you want to cook and how you want to do it. Yeah, so as far as DSPs, I think that we look for dependable, reliable, compassionate, honest, caring, friendly, hardworking, polite, considerate, respectful. Those are words, and on time. Those are some words that I came up with for the ideal DSP. It's almost like somebody that's going to be very respectful toward you and of your wishes and how you want things done and is willing to help you achieve your goals. If I had to sum it up, yes.
And also remarkably inadequate wages.
Yeah, they should be paid a lot more. Well, at least more. They should be. Some of the agencies I know don't. Some agencies pay more than others, but I'll be showing some slides from a past job I had with an agency called Regional Center for Workforce Transformation, and we did a lot of training for DSPs virtually on Zoom. We had talks like this, but it would be on Zoom. And that's one thing that we advocated for, directly, indirectly, was for higher wages, more training, more education. Now there's programs around New York State where DSPs can go to college to take classes on how to be a good DSP. With those credentials, they can get higher wages. So they're working on that. When you're hiring, interviewing, and meeting people to potentially be your DSP, some things to look for. Do they come on, do they arrive to your meeting place on time? The tone of their voice. I've had problems with DSPs that just talk to me in a mean tone of voice, and that gets old fast. And it's you want someone that's going to be friendly and that isn't going to look at it as something that they don't like doing or they don't like you. That's not going to work. their attire, how they're dressed. Are they dressed appropriately? Are their clothes clean? Are their replies appropriate, respectful? Do they make eye contact with you? And do they show respect toward you? I found that when I would hire DSPs, I used to have them just come to my house the first time we met because I didn't always have my own transportation. Yeah, Emily's kind of not shaking her head to that because that's not a good idea because you don't, especially if you don't, unless you know the person through someone you trust, it could be someone that's just applying off the street. You don't know them. You don't want them to know where you live, and especially if you're alone, you don't want them coming over your house if you don't know them. So I changed my plan to have we meet at like a bookstore or something like that. That's what I started doing, and or some other public place until you get to know them, until you get some references, until you get a feel for who this person is that you're meeting. I also recommend having someone you trust with you, especially if you have a disability, a physical disability or other vulnerabilities, such as a friend, your DSP, your broker, that can help you feel and be more safe and more comfortable, and potentially think of some questions. You can brainstorm what you want to ask your DSP. In the sources, I put some sources at the end of each section, or most of the sections, but these are slides I have from one of my colleagues, Melody Johnson from Workforce Transformation. And we did a talk together a few months ago, or what was it, last year, about hiring DSPs. One of her some wisdom she taught me is that when you hire DSPs, you want to ask them about their past behavior. Don't just ask them like, oh, what would you do in this situation? Because it's easy to say the right thing, but it's more difficult to answer what have you done in the past in this situation. And that's more indicative of how their behavior will be. Because I've had situations where DSPs say the right thing, they seem to be nice, but then when you hire them, then they act not so nice, or they're just not the same as how they claim to be. For example, you want a DSP that's going to be friendly, so you could ask them to tell you about a time when they found it difficult to be friendly at work and how did they handle it. You might get a more honest gauge of your DSP's personality by asking a more behavior-based question like this. You could ask about them being empathetic, what it means to them, how they've shown, and more importantly, how they have shown empathy in their previous work. And you can ask about almost anything you want, but one big thing for me is about punctuality. So you can ask about the time they've been late and how they handled it. Working with DSPs, once you've hired somebody, a challenge that I found, I'll speak from my own experience, but if anybody else has any input, this is hopefully a discussion. Maintaining boundaries, because the DSP relationship can get very close and almost intimate in some ways. They're in your house, they're doing things with you that most people take care of themselves. They're helping you with everyday things. You're relying on them to accomplish your goals. And it's a power dynamic. They're not exactly your parent or your child or your sibling or your spouse or your significant other, but it's a professional, unique, and close relationship, which can sometimes become too close for comfort. I've had DSPs treat me like I'm their older brother in a way, and I thought that it's kind of cute because they think of you as family. That's nice, but then they kind of think they can talk to you disrespectfully when they're lacking professionalism if they do that. ultimately the DSPs have to respect your authority as their boss. I like it to have input, suggestions, recommendations from my DSPs, and it's a nuanced dynamics, support a relationship, but ultimately, I think that it can get to a point where sometimes some DSPs, you get some people, it's more of a power struggle. They're interested in having as much power over you, or just kind of, they're not respecting you as much. There has to be a balance where you're able to communicate your wishes, your needs, your likes, your dislikes, and that can go both ways. The DSP communicating their wishes and everything too. But this is kind of, it's not showing up here, but I have look for signs of a power struggle. If you feel you're being mistreated, or if your DSP is bullying you. Yes, Francis.
Thank you. Testing. There we go. So thank you for taking a second to take my question. So I'm a mental health counselor, and I work with some folks who have some difficulty with this particular issue, managing boundaries with a DSP, because it is a very close relationship, and because there's a conflict of interest internally a little bit for some folks, where they want to have a hard conversation with a DSP, but because how close they are to that person, they don't want to hurt their feelings. So I could give advice on how to manage that, but I don't have a DSP. So I guess I would like to reflect that back to you a little bit. What would you say to that person on how to manage that conversation, on how to reiterate their boundaries?
Two things that I think of. You're right. There are times where you get close to somebody, and you have to kind of be delicate as to how you talk to them, because you don't want to alienate them. You want them to stay motivated to help you and be your support and your ally. I'd say choose your battles, and also try to be respectful. There's a way, maybe if you feel very upset, maybe distance yourself from the situation. Try to eliminate yourself from that situation until you cool down, and then find a time. Sometimes you do have to have hard talks with your DSPs where you're challenging their behavior or telling them that you don't like something, but you have to be. I think you have to work on assertiveness skills. Yes, Tyler.
I know what you mean by that. That means that if there's like something that an individual doesn't like something, they have to or the staff is doing something insignificant, staff can actually, in coping skills, they can talk, very calmly, very emotionally, like instead of yelling and screaming, at the individual, they can talk very calmly, and then that's how the emotional with the other individuals will be very comfortable. That means with if any other staff that's throughout in boundaries, if an advocate, if we an individual, if go to a public library or Walmart or a mall, and they're having difficult times, and they just they got to work with them of how calmly they can actually cope with them, so they can know what's going on with their their needs of how difficult the situation, or that's how we go on with our day.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a good DSP is very valuable, and it can be a very complex and challenging job to do it right. But I think the other side to that is that can be very rewarding, because it's a very personal relationship with rewards involved in it on both sides. To go back to what Francis was asking, I just think there have to be some barriers, some boundaries. There have to be some things, there's some kind of gray areas, but some things are deal breakers, or some things are completely unacceptable. I've had DSPs where I tolerated the gray area for a long time, and then at a certain point, it just I need to look for somebody else because this isn't working. And maybe sometimes at times I've tried to bring it up to the DSP to see if we can work something out. Other times I just haven't really, maybe it's a fault of mine. I haven't felt very hopeful about a good outcome, so I just kind of let them go. But if you feel like somebody's out to get you, it's kind of hard to change their mind. You know what I mean? Like, so people are having a DSP that's out to get you isn't gonna work. I don't think it's just not gonna work. That's one of the unacceptable aspects of having a DSP. But yeah, DSPs. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So I was just wondering, have you ever had an instance, you had a long-term DSP and found that the boundary kind of was getting too friendly? Do you feel like there's like a time limit, like a longevity at some point you're like, okay, I'm just gonna have to change every 5 years? Like, do you know what I'm saying?
I think yes. I think I know what you're saying, and I found that I don't mean to be like biased because of ages, but I found that I used to hire a lot of my DSPs. I've had good quality DSPs, hiring them from the nursing school over at Binghamton University, and they, for the most part, the ones that I ended up hiring would be very good quality work DSPs. It's very smart, very quick learners, very reliable, and so on. The limiting factor there is that I'd only have them for a year or two until they graduate and move on with their life. And I never really, I've only had maybe one DSP that I've had for more than 2 or 3 years. And the problem wasn't that the boundaries, as far as like, maybe it was a boundary issue, but I just felt like she was out to get me kind of in some ways. And I just felt like she was being hostile toward me. That's what changed, and that's why that didn't work out. But I don't think that there's, especially, it depends on the age of the person served and the DSP. I think a lot of that in the stage of life. But I don't think there's like a lifespan to a DSP relationship just because of the necessarily. I don't think there is. I think there's some people like older. I think older people. I guess it's like the cliche. Older people tend to be more mature, right? So if you find someone that's mature enough and they're available and they're willing to help, I think it can go on for a long time. And then they'll if it works for that can happen for a long time. Like they don't really. I've had boundary issues in different areas of the different types of boundary issues, but yeah, I don't think that is inevitable that if you have that you can't have a longer relationship with DSP professional relationship with somebody because of that.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think it would be better if, I don't know if you can cut the emotion out of it? If people could actually, if you're interviewing basically for somebody to be a DSP, it's like a job interview. So
Yes.
You're the boss, that your employee. I'm not phrasing my question right here, but would it be, if going forward for people, would it be easier if they treated it as a boss employee and trying to take the emotion of, intimacy and things that happen in your thoughts and feelings out of the relationship? Like you do tasks for me, but we don't have conversations about thoughts and feelings. Is that impossible to separate?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think sometimes, and maybe that's an issue I've dealt with sometimes, is that sometimes my DSPs are the only people that I'm around that are like around my age or, that are in person, that are kind of, that I could say are more or less peers in a lot of ways. And so I would be opening up to them about a lot of personal things that I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have talked about it that much about my personal stuff. But I think that you have a point. Help your DSP maintain their professionalism. You kind of have to, be selective about where you're leading the relationship as their boss. So I think it's good to maintain kind of like your authority over the relationship. It's tricky. I think it can be more complicated to that because, like, say, if I need help reaching something, my DSP is going to be the one that has that ability that I don't have. Ultimately, they're there to help me, and that's what they're getting paid to do. So it's kind of like, I think further training for the DSP and maybe for the person served too kind of could be helpful, or reaching out to the coordinator through the fiscal intermediary, other people that are involved with HR issues. That's a good point. Thank you.
Hi, Derek, it's Val.
Hi.
I was wondering if you could elaborate on what you mean by they were out to get you. So maybe some of the other folks who might be working with someone notice those red signs, those red flags.
Well, sometimes I just feel like the DSP former DSP I'm thinking of sometimes would be, say, the tone of voice would be kind of like almost to try to intimidate me or to try to, disrupt the power dynamic to make them like they have more power over me than, emphasize that they have more power over me than I over them, and I have to listen to what they say. Or they'll sneak in actions or words that are hurtful or disruptive or inappropriate. Let me see if I can think of an example. I mean, and this could be gray area, but over time it becomes clear if there's a motive, or if it's just not working. Like if I'm trying to read or concentrate, making a lot of noise or banging the dishes, or I had one DSP who would, when I'd be in the living room trying to concentrate on something, she'd be walking back and forth across the room like a million times and like just continually doing that. And I'm like, well, what do I say to that? Like, it's disrupting me. Maybe like, and I told her, like, can you please try to sit still? And then, okay. And then she's making a lot of noise with the ice in her cup. Like, and it's like, it's like the little things. And I think they can be considered sometimes microaggressions.
It sounds a little like a marriage going bad.
I'm sorry, what's that?
It sounds like a marriage going bad.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's similar to all those other kind of relationships that you have, yeah. And that's what happens. People, I've had experiences where some people maybe get frustrated with other relationships in their life and then bring it to working with you or working with me, and then they try to. That's their motive for being out to get me and that, or the person served, because we're reliant on them to help us and everything. But yeah, I just think sometimes you have to take risks and just make your wishes known. Whether it's up. You can't always control how people are gonna react, but just to make your wishes known, because that's the best, to be honest and transparent in that way. This is just my recognizing that Melody provided some of the slides from the DSP section of my presentation. I don't know if anybody else here likes to travel sometimes. I'm sure Tyler likes to travel. And I travel once in a while, less so since COVID and during COVID, but sometimes I stay in hotels when I travel out of town, and since I had my limited mobility with my paralysis, it can be difficult to find accessible accommodations. So I wanted to include a little bit about what you can do if you have a disability, especially a physical disability, and you need accommodations when you're traveling. We can go through these slides hopefully a little bit quicker, but the ADA, I found out the ADA does not have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which regulates how public businesses and public places have to be accessible and accommodate people with disabilities. Has no rules about bed height. So bed can be this high, but for someone like me, getting on that bed is going to be very difficult. For somebody that uses a walker, someone with back issues, with joint issues, it's going to be very difficult to transfer or to get onto that bed. As for this bed, which it was in a hotel that I stayed at almost about a year ago, and I advocated for myself, and the manager came up, she was very nice, and offered to remove the second arrow there is pointing to the metal bed frame underneath. She took that out. She helped the custodial staff herself, the housekeeping staff, and they took out that, and then it was a much more accessible situation for me. So that worked out well. I think they do this. They make the beds higher because they want to protect the backs of their staff, like the housekeepers. They don't want them going out on disability from back injuries. But at the same time, they have to be able to have recourse if somebody has trouble getting up to that level of the bed. Here's this was in New Jersey, actually. This is right in Vestal at the True Hilton on Vestal Parkway. I just went here to investigate how accessible the rooms were, and there's a woman working there who was very nice and let me in one of the rooms, the accessible rooms, to show me around, to show me how it looked. These bed heights are much more accessible. They're not too high, they're not too low. There's plenty of space around the beds, and the hardwood floors are easier to navigate for wheelchairs, and they're cleaner. So that was good. It was nice to see that a more modern building was more accessible. This is back in New Jersey. Some issues with the shower setup. The shower bench isn't very safe. I don't think anyone with any kind of physical disability would want to have to shower in that shower bench. It's not very secure or safe. How would I be able to reach the shampoo and body wash behind me? There's not the right amount of. There are codes. The ADA has certain requirements for shower setups. This hotel didn't meet them, and a lot of hotels, even in this country, do not meet ADA requirements. Some of the reasons can be because it's an older building, or just because they don't make the extra effort until somebody complains and holds them to it.
Derek, would you mind just clarifying for everyone what exactly the ADA is and what the rights are there?
Yes, the ADA is a series of laws that were put into effect, I believe it was 1991, signed by the president. 90, okay.
You might be right, too. It was right around that.
Signed by the president to make the public more accessible to people with disabilities, whether blind, hard of hearing, or deaf, physical disabilities, paralysis, CP, using a wheelchair, to make sidewalks and buildings, libraries, schools, grocery stores, places that everyone should be able to go, make them more accessible, including hotels.
That's why all buildings have ramps now.
Yes, it was a very great, event that for our people with disabilities, that when that was signed into law. But the downside, the other side to that is that many businesses don't and get away with not being to code unless somebody complains and holds them to it. This is the hotel back in Vestal, the True Hilton in Vestal. This one is much more, you can see the shower bench is much more secure. There's actually 2 shower benches, so there's a choice. They're both removable. There's more shower bars. And the only thing I'd say about this setup is that the shower head, the portable shower head way up high there, like how would I be able to reach it unless I had like the reaching device? But I mean, it's a more modern construction, that hotel, and it's good to see that I think this is an acceptable setup. This is another part of the same bathroom with an accessible sink, and you can see there's a lot of room in this bathroom for wheelchairs. I feel comfortable in my power chair in this bathroom because there's so much room, and I think that's awesome. So some things you can do as far as the bed height in a hotel, you can ask for, like what I did for the bed frame to be removed. You can ask for a roll-in bed or a cot. It's also good to plan ahead. You call the hotel. You want to call the actual physical location, not the 800 number, to ask about their accessibility. And it's a rule of thumb to try to get something in writing guaranteeing that you're going to have an accessible setup when you get there. So you're not, because they could just say, well, when you get there, well, we don't have anything accessible, sorry. But if you have it in writing, then you can kind of force them. You're more likely to be able to force them to accommodate you. You can ask to speak to housekeeping. They're part of the most knowledgeable about the different rooms in each property. Okay, so I'll talk for a little bit about bullying. Well, first, I wanted to start by looking at things from a bully's perspective from this resource I found. Excuse me. According to this resource, which I think is pretty accurate, people who do bullying, it can be seen as a scream of their own brokenness, a sign that their needs are not being met. They're not getting the love, the support, the emotional support. They're not feeling appreciated. Like it's the whole thing. Like if someone's coming down, like say you have a boss who's mean to you, then how are you going to want to act to the next person? You're going to want to be mean to them, or you're going to be more likely to be mean to them because that's just how it works. It's like the domino effect. Not to say that this is an excuse for bullying, but we should just try to appreciate what causes it so to help mitigate it and avoid situations where people are bullied. Here's another image which has a lot of descriptors for what bullying is. Someone that intimidates you, taunts you, mocks you, persecutes you, harasses you, shuts you out, tricks you, all of those things.
Sarcasm.
He says sarcasm as well.
Sarcasm, yeah.
That's a big one. I remember when I was working at Burger King or something, they always
I know with developmental disabilities like ADHD or ADD, we either talk too fast or slow. But I know if I talk a little bit slow, they always come and get me and they interrupt me and they change the whole conversation. Like you talk about something and they jump to another sentence, even though it makes sense, but doesn't. But like a normal, like a person that they think that they can just come and get you and jump to a next conclusion. Like say, I'm talking about like a drink or like Sprite or water or any kind of drink or food. They interrupt and then they go to the next person or friend and they say, hey, I like Sprite, like you want to make Baja Blast or something. And then they just change and they says, oh, and they try to repeat it, or mostly like at least 3 or 4 times, which is manage of either a boss or a co-man, like a corporate, like a co-worker during work. But that's sarcasm.
Yeah, I definitely had that happen to me a lot of times, even by people that are supposed to be, you know, close to me and supportive of me. Being cut off, being interrupted, not having your, like, yeah, I don't know if anyone has it happen where someone asks you a question and they don't even wait for an answer. They go on to their, what they want to say next, and it's like, well, why'd you even ask me that? Like, you know.
Even though they're cool people or not, like they just jump into conclusions.
Yeah. So I have some hopefully valuable facts that we can, to have a learning experience about bullying. I have sources that I'm comfortable, if you guys want your slides, if you have your email there, we can send you the slides if you want to look. But I have some research I did. 31% out of 2,000 adults who were interviewed reported being bullied as an adult. Students with disabilities are 3 to 4 times more likely to be bullied than quote unquote normal students. And I just added that places with children and vulnerable adults, such as schools, other institutions, hospitals, nursing homes, see a lot of bullying happening. But it can, I think it can happen pretty much anywhere. That's the thing about it. Yes, Francis.
I'd just like to comment on this a little bit. I really appreciate you bringing this point up for us, because professionally, I can absolutely say for certain that many of the teenagers or preteens that I work with for counseling have direct experiences with bullying in school. And furthermore, I even work with a couple of folks who are now homeschooled because it was a cost-benefit analysis of, is it worth subjecting my child to consistent bullying, and is it going to be worth it at the end of the day? And there are plenty of caregivers who made the choice to take their kid out of school because they would rather take on the extra responsibility of homeschooling their child, despite probably not really having ever thought about doing that, because it wasn't worth it. And so I think self-advocacy is really important on this one, because while there absolutely are federal protections for children in educational facilities, it's up to us to make sure we self-advocate for our family members ourselves that those federal regulations are followed, so kids are protected from that mistreatment.
Yes, definitely. And that's the thing. Each situation is different. It's hard to say, like, there's not necessarily one simple way to deal with all bullying. Each situation is different, and it's just that I think as a responsible parent or caretaker, or even a DSP or care manager, looking out for more vulnerable people, we have to kind of, you know, take that into account that this can be happening, and take it seriously if somebody is saying that you know they feel like they're being mistreated or bullied. So I don't know if anybody here recognizes who that is in the picture. Anybody? Yes, he was a brilliant physicist. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a brilliant physicist who had a rare muscular disease, I think it was, that he lost all of the voluntary motion in his body. So he had a very severe disability, much more severe than mine, for example. And he still lived I think he had a good quality of life. He spoke out a lot about his life with his disability. One of the things that a lot of people thought about him was that because of the severeness of his disability, they thought that, you know, he'd be better off dead, that his body was like a cage that was restricted him from living a full life. They couldn't imagine how he could have any happiness in his life living like that physically. Whereas I don't have any quotes from him, and maybe I should find some from him, but he spoke out saying that the opposite was true, that he felt like he could live a good quality of life even though he had his disability. Not that it wasn't more difficult, but it's still possible. from his own experience, he had the good thing for the technology and everything that he had to be able to communicate. But he was a physicist, a productive researcher and physicist at Cambridge University in England. Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, we come back to boundary issues about Dr. Hawking too, because he dumped his wife and married his nurse.
I think, yes, I heard that, yes. Yes, I mean, sometimes I've heard stories where, like, someone with a condition or disability will have a caretaker that they fall in love with, and then when they realize it's mutual, I think the trick is you just have to stop the professional relationship and then embark on the new relationship. Not the kind of, that's what I've heard has worked out. Yeah.
Dr. Hawking had game.
Yeah, definitely. So from the research, I found that only 2.4% of speaking roles in films are played by differently abled or disabled people, which means that that's not up to what the percentage of people in the world with disabilities are. According to the World Health Organization, about 1 in 6 people worldwide experience a significant disability within their lifetimes. And so what does that mean? It means we need to be represented in things like media and movies more as we are, so that people don't get incorrect bias about what it means to have disability, that we're just, we need someone to save us all the time, or that we're just the liabilities for society, that we can't do anything productive, or so on. This is a French movie that I watched a couple of times that I don't know if any of you have heard of it, Les Intouchables, The Untouchables. It's a French movie, and it's very well done. It's based on a true story about a wealthy Parisian man who has he was a gliding accident, and he broke his neck, and he was paralyzed. He became quadriplegic. He couldn't move his body below his neck, and this is his story of hiring I don't think he called it his DSP, but his caretaker, played by Omar Sy, the French African man. And I think it's a very good movie. I think it's still on Netflix. It's definitely worth watching, even if you don't speak French, because they have the subtitles. And there's another movie that's a similar plot. I forget the name, but it's based in New York, so it's in English, about a wealthy man who hires his staff, and it's with Kevin Hart in it. He plays the caretaker, but I forget the name. It gives more of an insight as to having a spinal cord injury, and living with a severe physical disability.
That's the one with 10,000 VCs. Director of 10,000 VCs in comics.
Is that the name of the movie?
It's got throughout in comic books. New York Times. He does with.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Kevin Hart was worked for developmental and also with manageable with movies and also with comics.
Yes.
On New York Times, which is brilliant for that opportunity with individuals and developmental disabilities, which is good.
My name is Chelsea Scher.
Well,
I have a question.
Sure.
I have a seizure disorder. Is that considered as being retarded?
I don't think it is. No, it's a seizure disorder.
No.
I think saying retarded is not in use so much these days, because it has a very derogatory connotation to it, like almost like you're.
I consider myself as different.
You can be different, but I think retarded is not a name that is not what you want to describe yourself as. Having a seizure disorder just means just that. It's a I don't know a ton about seizure disorders, but it's a medical condition, but it's not. I don't think it has anything to do with what people think of. Yeah, neurological.
I meant neurological, not mental.
So you would consider myself as different?
Well, sure.
We're all, we're all
All right.
different.
That's all I need to know.
Alright, Tyler Bever again. She got that from her mother. Her mom keeps calling, well, she called me retarded, moron, stupid. But what does that mean to me? Like, I'm different. I have a developmental disability. I have, ADHD, ADD. I kind of speak too fast, too slow. But what means that, we're all different? That's my child's grandmother. If my daughter comes to me, which I hope she'll be different, maybe more different than her. But, it's very nasty, disrespectful, and I think that it's mental for her to say that. But it's also a judgment towards others, including me and my wife, Chelsea. And I think it's really disrespectful and really nasty that actually.
Things that I'll be talking about as far as bullying is involve someone, like if it's a boss or someone at work, involve someone that's higher up. Try to have a witness, try to document everything that is going on so that in case you need to know, so you don't forget, document it, write it down what happened, even if it's just something small, because that could be useful later if you ever have to take any action against people to stop it from happening. But get other people involved, try to have a support system, lean on your friends, or if you have supportive family or co-workers, because I think it's terrible to feel that you're alone, for anybody to feel they're alone and being bullied, because it happens to a lot of people. And we have to kind of like join with each other, join forces to be able to sometimes deal with it. I hope that helped answer part of your question, at least. But
I got one more thing.
I have a theory that actually when I was actually I should have not parked there, but I parked at a handicap parking spot. But I don't know if I'm not considered as handicapped. I don't know. But when I parked there, I got it. My wife told me to park there at street and backing in, and first of all, I don't know. I know I shouldn't be parking there. I got a ticket, and it was like I paid like it was $70 for I got fined, and I shouldn't be parked there. And then the other time, I parked at another place. Well, no, same place, and several others, including police officers, are parked in a handicap spot. I'm not okay with that. If I get ticketed and a police officer, I saw police officers getting parked there in a handicap spot. Even though they're law enforcement, they're still taking people's spaces, including even though I took someone handicapped that needs it, but a police officer is not handicapped. Even though he's a law enforcement, it's not okay for ticket people like me or others and a false then of discrimination. I shouldn't be parked there anyways. And so is that police officer. It's not okay. That's disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting. But the only thing is, when I actually parked in a non-handicapped spot, the same police officer gave me a ticket, but it was at 12:03. By law, he should identify himself, or he shouldn't be a police officer anymore. Don't trust him. And it was at 12:03, and then he ticketed me at 12:28, which is I apparently got bullied at the Treasury. I don't really trust the woman at that place, but I know that when I was kind of paying the due, I did. And then currently, when I was walking away, my wife overheard that woman, and she said she was kind of, when I was walking away, I got good ears. She said she was kind of lying about something when I was walking away, and she was giggling and laughing while I was paying the due, and that goes for my Happy Meals. But I know what I did was not currently wrong, but I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't park in the handicap spot. I should not done that. I should not. But a police officer I've seen has been doing that too. I'm not okay with that. And a lot of people in here shouldn't be okay with that either. Police officers.
Yeah, I don't think unless someone's missing something, you shouldn't be allowed to park in a handicap spot just because you're law enforcement, unless you need the access for whatever emergency situation it is. But just to do it because it's convenient, I don't think should be that, and you can get away with it maybe, that shouldn't be allowed either. I agree with you there.
Absolutely.
I've seen a number of other times where people are parking in the transfer zones, where the lines are between parking spots. People park there even though there's signs that say no parking. And that happens sometimes, and usually I consider myself lucky if that happens, if I'm able to find another spot that is okay for me to park in, that I can still get to where I have to go. But I try sometimes I take pictures and I show it. I go into, if it's at a school, I'll show it to a teacher and say someone's parked out there in the handicap spot. They don't have a handicap license plate, and then to try to deal with it. Okay, so this is a good movie to watch. I think it's almost like a comedy. There's some sad parts to it, but it's definitely worth watching. The Untouchables. So here are some strategies to combat bullying that I researched. I think this came from psychologytoday.com. A female psychologist wrote an article about bullying. And this was not specific to people with disabilities, just to anybody that finds themselves in a situation like this, because it can happen to anybody. If possible, you want to be able to take a stand and not act out of fear or shame. And like I said, if you include someone in a superior role for support, if it's at work and your coworker is bullying you, try to reach out to your manager, somebody above you. If it's your manager bullying you, try to reach out to their boss. If it's, like I said, document everything in case you need proof or support later on. Just take notes, type up notes, or write down notes about what happened. I find it's very good to talk about it. That will help you more than you think, just talking about it, because you'll feel less shame, but it kind of is a way to self-validate, especially if you're talking to someone that's going to be supportive of you, or at least is willing to listen to you without judging you and without, telling you that never happened, that your perceptions are wrong, and so on. Bullying is real. It's a difficult situation. It isn't just in your head. It's important to set boundaries, physical or emotional, not to accept the insecurities, the anger, the emotional baggage of the bully. And a lot of time, there's any combination of those things when it happens. It's up to you to decide and to kind of, sometimes I find myself feeling compelled, or like, oh, well, I'm just going to do this action, even though maybe I don't really want to do it. But at the end of the day, it's up to us, unless someone's forcing us to do something, to go where we go, to do what we do, and to be around whoever we're going to be around and associate with. Some people rise up by pushing others down. They make themselves feel better by, trying to hurt other people. This is more like the psychology of it, that people that have been hurt tend to hurt other people, like a vicious cycle. If you can, try to practice compassion, not to look at the bully as somebody that you want to hurt back, even though that might be the first thing you feel, but like, say they must have experienced their own negative experiences, they must have had some trauma, or they must have been bullied. That kind of helps to understand it, helps with dealing with it when it happens to you, because words can hurt too, even if it's nothing physical. Bullies tend to have weak egos and their own trauma. This one about depersonalizing, saying that it's nothing personal, it's kind of, I think it can be very personal in a way, but at the same time not being personal. It's almost like if someone takes your phone and throws it on the floor and it breaks. It's personal because they took your phone and maybe they're trying to hurt you and bother you, but it's not personal because that's just gravity, and they knew that that would break your phone. So that's gravity. If you look at bullying as kind of like a law in terms of the laws of human nature, bullies, if it wasn't going to happen to you, it's going to happen to somebody else probably, you know? So if you look at it like that and try to look in the scheme of things, don't take it saying like something's wrong with you and or that you deserved it. From this source, she said that everything happens to us reflects nature, human nature, or the nature of this world. Here are my sources for bullying. PsychologyToday.com, University of Virginia, Hand in Hand QC, I'm not, okay. That's more about disability in the media. A website about students with disabilities. And then this one, number 5, is a good article I recommend reading from Forbes magazine. I think it's written by a man who has a disability, and it's called The Many Flavors of Disability Bullying. It's very specific to bullying among people with disabilities. I'd recommend checking that out. Yes?
That's the same thing as constitutional rights.
Yeah, we have I mean, I don't have the Constitution memorized, but I think we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that's what it says that in the Constitution that I remember. And we have a right. One thing that is interesting that I just found out about a week or less than 2 weeks ago, is that mental abuse in the workplace is not yet illegal. And there's a movement going around. I've gotten emails about this. There's a movement going around to try to draft laws that make people in the workplace accountable for their actions. Bullying, harassment, but sexual harassment based on all those protected categories like age, disability, marital, all of those things are protected. But just you can get away with doing mental abuse if it's not related to any of those specific groups. If I say someone is mentally abusing me and they're saying, well, if I can't show a jury that it's based on my disability or based on my sexual orientation or based on my age, then I don't have a case. Just mental abuse itself is not illegal, and they're trying to change it. Yes. Alexis, did you want to?
Yeah, someone on the live stream is asking if you had advice for anyone who might be too intimidated to advocate for themselves.
Well, when I was younger, I used to play sports more. And so I like to use sports analogies. So it's like saying you're too weak to lift a certain weight or something like that. So what do? You start with a smaller weight, a lighter weight, and build up the strength. I personally was dealing with some mental health issues earlier this year, and I found this book at the Mental Health Association on assertiveness. It's an assertiveness workbook, which has helped me speak up for myself and understand what to expect, what I can expect, and not what I can't, what's unreasonable to expect from other people in general and speaking. So I would say practice. like find a friend and practice what you, going through your thoughts, identifying what your thoughts and feelings are, what it is you want to say to somebody, practice with a friend or look in the mirror, practice in front of yourself. It might sound silly, but I think these are valuable things that you can do to build. You'll be surprised how that will help your confidence. When I first started speaking in front of groups, I was pretty shook up. That was about right before COVID. I had just finished my master's degree and I was teaching my first class. I was pretty shook up and very nervous, and I was like, do I really enjoy this? It was very stressful for me, even though I had a small class. But then with time and practice, it got better. And that's what I think can happen as far as speaking up for yourself. You are going to make it's normal to be afraid of making mistakes, because you are going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to happen the way you want them to. But with practice and diligence, that's the only way that you're going to get better. Nobody else can do it for you.
Thank you.
We are just getting to the end of my slideshow. So people with various conditions, medical conditions and disabilities, differently abled, may face more obstacles overall in general than most people without disabilities. Trying to stay positive, having a lot of it is, I found, also is mind over matter. Look at Stephen Hawking. He couldn't move almost any of his muscles in his body, but he led a good quality life. I mean, he was brilliant. He had a great mind, but even so, that doesn't. I don't think that was the main. I think he just can't. You just kind of have to accept what you're given in life, sometimes to a certain extent, and try to have a positive mindset. And with the support of other people, that's almost mandatory. It is mandatory at times. We can overcome obstacles. It's okay, and sometimes it's necessary to ask for help. Try to find out who you are, what your needs are, and then work with others to help get your needs met. And part of meeting your needs is helping other people. There's that saying, if you feel like hopeless, or you feel helpless, and try to help somebody else. That's a good way to kind of build yourself up. So it's all this, not just being selfish. I don't mean this in a way like just focus on your own needs and don't think of other people. I just mean like all of us have needs, and try to find beneficial mutual relationships. Having positive support relationships is a good way to have a happier life. There's the internet, researching in the newspaper or on the internet, on television, on the radio, by word of mouth, doing things where you will find people with that have similarities to you, like whether it's going to the library or taking a class. And some people not everybody's going to act a way that you like or a way that is appropriate. So some people we just have to keep distance from and mitigate negative influences from people who would bully us or mistreat us. Yes.
So with the influences between handicap and developmental, between that and people with alcohol and drug uses, like say if someone or a person's laying on the street, either he was constipated or dead or just laying there and he doesn't want to do anything. And between that and a person that needs really help and they're either rolling on the street. So twice I was actually driving my car, and between there was an elderly guy with a cane, and he's walking across, and then there's so many cars that's coming, and I get out of my car and I walk him around like for a couple of minutes to make sure he gets to that destination. And an influence of negative influence of a person's a bum or a drug dealer, drug dealer that's just laying there doing nothing. And booze.
I'm not sure what your question is.
So the negative influence is just a normal American riffraff means for probably a troublemaker that doesn't know the society of like, he's just sitting there, doing booze, alcohol, drugs.
Are you saying like the goal is to try to introduce people into your life that'll bring positivity?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the good positive is like with like people with handicap, developmental disabilities, and you learn something from that. And
Yes.
positive.
Yeah, sometimes we'll be surprised where we'll learn something where we form our close relationships in life, where we find our friends and our significant others and everything like that. But sometimes I've heard people say otherwise, but sometimes there are red flags in relationships where we want to, like, if you see somebody lying on the street and you're not sure if they're okay, maybe just call 911 or something.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's good to go up to them unless you're trained in medicine or as an EMT or something.
I've had a lot of experience with my wife, and we had to do CPU, CPR, and she had seizures while we were on the go on the drive.
Yeah.
I've been influenced with that.
The different medical situations can be, it's hard sometimes because even sometimes medical staff don't know how to handle them. Like with myself with spinal cord injuries, sometimes I go to the hospital and for a UTI or whatever, and then they're not sensitive to the fact that I need to shift my weight or that whatever other medical need it might be. I have to like educate them about it. Luckily, I'm able to do that most of the time. But sometimes we need to advocate for other people around us for their medical needs. That is pretty much it for me that I have prepared to talk about today. Thank you for listening. Here's my email and phone number. Feel free to reach out to discuss self-advocacy or any other related topics. And I don't know, Emily, she's still here.
We are gonna, she did print them out there right at the table when you walk in.
Did you take people's emails? Did they have?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. We can send out some email, if you want the slide, would anybody like to see all of the slides or just like kind of like the main parts, the ones with my contact information, with the sources, or how do you feel about that? Because I don't know, like essentials? Essentials?
Yeah.
I would say send the whole thing.
Okay, I can send the whole thing and then you
It's
decide.
work for you.
Yeah.
I mean, what we can do is like anybody on the way out, if they want to put a little star next to their name on the sign-in, we can then know that that person wants to be sent all that stuff. And so we're not, sending people things that they're not asking for. Does that sound okay? Or
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Well, thank you again. And then if you have any questions, I have to leave around 3 o'clock because my DSP has to get back to her next. But feel free, you can take my email and phone number and reach out to me anytime I get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Derek, very much. That concludes our season's presentation for June. So we'll let you know if and when there are some details about our upcoming presentation in September. Thank you for joining. Please come to the next one. We hope that you learned something today. And once again, thanks, Derek. We really appreciate it. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. That's great. Super grateful. Thank you. Of course, thank you. I'm going to turn this off.